Hey, welcome back to the High Vibe Podcast Network. I'm your host, Michelle Abraham, again, and I'm here today with a really great guest, another one of our High Vibe Leaders podcast hosts on the network, Julianne. Hey, Julianne, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Michelle. Great to be here.
Awesome. Well, let me take you guys on a little bit of a journey about Julianne's show we've got coming up. So as you know, the High Vibe Leaders Podcast Network is where soul-led leadership meets visibility, voice, and legacy. So today we're stepping into a very sacred space with Julianne. She's one of our radiant hosts, and she's the founder of the House of Story Medicine and host of Your Story is Your Portal. So very cool. Julie is more than a publisher. She's found this space. She's a story midwife. That's really cool. A sacred listener and a guide for your soul-led leaders to uncover the deeper meaning behind the stories that they carry. Her podcast invites listeners into transformational conversations, each one a doorway, or a portal as we call it, a chance to see your life, your wounds, your wisdom, and map them back to your soul purpose. In this episode today, Julianne, we're going to help you guys discover a little bit more about her show and how your personal story becomes a sacred path of awakening and what it means to midwife someone's message from the soul. It's like giving birth, right?
Yeah.
And how authorship can be an act of remembrance, not just about writing a book. So welcome, Julianne. And, guys, let's walk through the portal of your own becoming. Let's find out what your story, that your story is your portal. So how cool is that? Julianne, how do you come up with that? Your story is your portal. And what made people because there's millions of publishers out there, but you've really narrowed this down into figuring out that story is medicine. So it's a journey.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Michelle, and you've been around for quite a lot of that journey because we've been doing business together, I think, for over 10 years. And so I've actually been publishing books for 17 years now, and I've published over 300 authors. And what I realized as I was on this journey was that it was way beyond a book. Every time that I was working with somebody, it literally was a doorway. It was a portal for them to really, truly understand their story, right? Because it's our experiences and the lessons that we've learned that then help us to understand, what is our own true soul purpose. So it is a journey. And I think for many people, that is forever changing. And as we get older, we start to get more and more clarity because we're like, oh, that's why that happened. Oh, and that's why that happened. And that's why that happened again. And so we get to this point where eventually we're like, oh, these really are like little breadcrumbs to help us understand, how can we be of true service to other people and what is our own true soul purpose. And so the story really is our medicine, and the story and our life story becomes that doorway to helping us to understand what is our true life purpose. And so, yes, I mean, and just for me, same thing, my own personal journey was eventually for me to understand that it's not just a book, it's way beyond a book. It's understanding our story and our stories helps us to understand, this is truly what I should be doing. And, for myself, I also came kind of full circle. I know you kind of came full circle too, Michelle, coming back to podcasts, and a lot of the other people that are in the High Vibe Leaders Network, it's the same thing. So, I think as we get older, we get more clarity about our story. And then when we get that clarity, then we're like, bing, oh yeah. So I was on track before. I just had to slightly change the approach to it. So that's really what happened. And I feel great because I'm just like, oh, I always had this gift. This was always my purpose. But then I kind of got distracted by other books, business books and things like that were not really serving and helping the people to really understand their own true purpose. So now I've just got a lot more clarity. And with the podcast, I can actually help other people understand how that story helps them. So when you listen to other people's stories and other people's examples, that's when we say, oh, I see how this could apply to me and how my story could help me to understand what my purpose is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because, when you go through helping someone write their book or like launch a podcast, we've started to notice that it's a transformation that they go through just to get that story out. So, and that story, as you say, is medicine, and that story helps them heal as they are sharing that message, and it makes them be able to rise to the frequency they need to be at to be able to use their voice, or whether their voices come through writing or whether it comes through speaking, they're using their now healed voice from that medicine of just like getting that story out there in the world. And it's really cool. It's really cool to witness that. So, and, you like you said, that's going back and tracing the breadcrumbs of your life to realize that you're on the right path the whole time with what you do. And you're a genius at pulling people's stories together for them. And then sometimes, like I found with myself too, sometimes when we do that stuff for other people, it's harder to do it for ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Right. I mean, and that's why what you do also really serves, Michelle, because, you provide a container for people to get away from the busy, distractions of their everyday life to really examine, their own life. Right. And it's the same with a book. We don't have the opportunity to like go quiet and to really examine our story. Like we just live the story and we never actually think about it or go back to look at the significance of it. And that's what writing your story does. It kind of forces you to reflect on your story and your journey.
Yeah. And we were together in Costa Rica a few weeks ago on the High Vibe Leaders Raise Your Vibe retreat. And as part of that retreat, we all got to teach something to the rest of the group. And what you taught was like how to uncover those hidden stories that we have in our lives that maybe we didn't even realize are like the stories that like, we might be looking for like, oh, I don't have a lot of stories to share. And then when you go digging for those hidden stories, like so transformational. So walk us through what those hidden stories are.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you're only hiding them from other people. It's not necessarily that they're hidden from you. They're always there. They're part of your life. But maybe you are, squashing them down or not talking about them or not bringing them into your brand because for whatever reason, you don't want that vulnerability part of it. So, a good example of that is, I think maybe 10 years into my journey of publishing books, I think it was around that magical 7 years, when you're just like at the edge, either it's going to be successful or not be successful. And I was just at that precipice, and I was actually just published Theo Flurry. So that was kind of like my first, like celebrity author. And then I was working with somebody and from Dyslexia Canada, and she told me that I was dyslexic. And of course, my first reaction was, oh my God, dyslexic publisher, that is going to be very bad for business, right? So that's an example where, I could have squashed that story and I could have kept that story hidden. But instead, I went all out and I went on the TED stage and told everybody that I was a dyslexic book publisher, because actually dyslexia is a way of thinking. It's a whole picture thinking, and it's also problem solving. And so that actually is my gift. So I was able to talk about that on the TED stage and then use that as part of my branding. So, it could have very easily been a hidden story where I didn't want anyone to know about it. And I judged myself that, oh, that's bad for business to tell people I'm dyslexic. But in reality, it was actually a really, really good thing to do. And it helped give my clients the confidence if they were like, oh, my writing's not good enough, or, my English isn't good enough, or any of these excuses why you don't want to write your story. I can now give that example of like, well, I'm a dyslexic book publisher. And you have to understand that being a storyteller is the most important thing, not being a writer. Being a writer is, that's a whole different skill set. There's people that are amazing fiction writers, and that's great. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about stories. And so as long as you can talk and you can tell your story and you're willing to be a little bit like vulnerable, let's say, a little bit vulnerable and dig into those hidden stories, then, we can really help you to understand the significance of those hidden stories, right?
Yeah. And in your podcast, you often say the story you're afraid of to tell is the one that sets you free. Yes. And I think that's exactly what those hidden stories are, the ones that are going to set you free. So you have made so many soul-led books into the world. What's the biggest internal shift you see when someone finally claims their story?
There's the lady I'm working with right now, for confidentiality, I won't name her, but you know who it is. And she's been working in nursing for her whole life. And she got to a point where she really felt like she wasn't in alignment with the nursing system. Her education had taught her so many other ways that we can address our health issues. Mindset is one of them, but also, so many other holistic methods and diets and things that we can do to help ourselves. And, as I was talking to her about her life story, she just said to me, Julie, I'm being honest. I feel like I'm poisoning my patients. I don't feel like I'm truly helping them. And I really feel like I can do so much more for my patients. And that was like a ding. And it was like, whoa, okay, let's do more for your patients, right? And so now we're creating this whole network of, whole body health. We're going to pull in other holistic healers, other mindset people, and we're going to create this whole network. And she just kept going, oh my God, look at my goose pimples, look at my goose, because she was so excited. I could see how it lit up, like her whole face, our whole body, everything was just like, that's it. That's what I'm supposed to be doing, And so for me, when I see that in somebody, I'm like, okay, I've done my job now because I've got this person on purpose. It was there all the time. She knew that she wasn't being of service as much as she could be, right? And this was just that point where she started to uncover some of those truths and some of those hidden stories. And she's like, okay, I got to be really honest. I don't think I'm really helping my patients, right? And we're like, okay, let's help them patients then. So, that's just a really good example, right? Where I can help people to do that and then give them the encouragement and the motivation and some ideas, right? Okay, why don't you do it yourself? Like, come on, let's create this whole network of people that can help, right? And bring them all together. And so, yeah, she totally lit up. And I see that in so many people, right? When they hear it back, when it's mirrored back to them, what their purpose is, they recognize it immediately and boom. The same thing happened with Alison Perry. She was kind of bringing together art therapy and she was bringing all these pieces together. And as we were working with her on her book, she suddenly realized, this is what I need to do to help people. I need to really, truly step into art therapy and music therapy. And now she's got her own studio and she's got a thriving art and music business. And she's got the podcast, because I directed her also to do a podcast, right? So the podcast also is all about that as well. So it's kind of bringing it all together. And I just got this gift where I can see it. I'm like the eye of the soul, and I can see into their soul when I can hear those hidden stories, and I can bring this all together and I go, okay, this is what we need to do. We need to create a network, or we need to do a membership site, or just for Alison, create a whole studio for her music and art therapy. So I'm able to just help really direct. They have it inside of them, Michelle. I'm just helping them to remember it.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And you're just like the detective, you're uncovering the gold in them already, which is awesome.
Yes.
So tell us about what we're going to experience listening to the podcast as we're just launching, as we are recording this right now. You recorded a bunch of episodes. We want to know what can we expect on the show?
So the first few episodes, Michelle, I'm talking about my own story and my own journey. So I talk about how I was very much out of alignment, and that really showed itself in my body. So again, it links to what we were just talking about, health, that it's all linked together. It's a whole mind, body, soul experience. And so when you get your story straight, in my case, it meant that I could get my body straight because I have scoliosis. So I was actually kind of bent out of shape because I was bent, I was not in alignment with my true soul purpose. And so I talk about that in the first few episodes. I talk about the importance of story and the importance of spending the time to look at our story. And I start to give some people some ideas, how to uncover their own hidden stories. So that's the first few episodes, is getting people kind of on track to get onto their own journey by sharing my own story. And then the next episodes, I start to interview other people that have had similar experiences, as well as some of my authors. I have a podcast that I did before, Life with Collective Purpose. And so I direct people also to some of my previous episodes so they can listen to some of those episodes as well. But really, I'm inspiring people to uncover their own stories.
I love it. And it's so important. I think a lot of people think, I don't have a story to tell. My life wasn't very interesting. But I think we all have a story inside that someone else needs to hear so that it can change their lives. So Julianne, it's so cool. Love that your story is your portal. It's such a cool kind of like bringing it back to like thinking about your story in a whole different way.
Yes. On a whole different day. I mean, and that's true, that's true too, right? Because as time progresses, we do think of our story in different ways. And so I'm helping people to look at that story in a different way. And what you just said is absolutely true. People think, oh, my story is not interesting enough. So I help them see why it's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's cool. Because we, can't see it ourselves. It's like right here. It's too close to our.
Yes.
If you're listening to this and something stirred inside you today with what we're talking about, that's no accident. Julianne holds the frequency of remembrance. And today she reminded us that our personal stories are not just things that happen to us. They are living invitations for us to get back to our truth. And if you're ready to explore your soul story and tune into her podcast, Your Story is Your Portal, which is on our High Vibe Podcast Network. And each episode is sacred space where authors and visionaries, conscious leaders awaken that inner voice that will help them remember who they really are. So tune in and listen. We are honored to walk alongside Julianne as she midwives another story. This one, The Story is Your Portal podcast. And it's going to change the world. So Julianne, thanks for being part of the network. If you opt into our High Vibe Podcast Network vault, you will find Julianne's in there, and you'll find this episode in there. You'll also find a free gift from Julianne and also a portal to working with her further in her business. So make sure you check out there. We're over at the highvibepodcastnetwork.com. You will find the vault over there with all of our hosts and their gifts in that vault. So Julie, until next time, we want you to trust your voice. We want you to walk through the portal, and we want you to keep your vibe high. But Julianne, any last words for our listeners today?
Your story is really important. And just remember, your story is going to help somebody else. So just tell your story.
Yeah, especially the one that you're afraid to tell.
Especially the one that you're afraid to tell.
Especially that one. That's what I need.
That one. Yes.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, go and check it out. Subscribe to the show, and we'll see you again, Julianne. We'll have you back on another time.
That's great. Thanks, Michelle. It's always great working with you.
So much fun. All right, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the High Vibe Podcast Network, where you get to meet the voices shaping the new earth. Want to launch your own High Vibe show, or do you want to grab all the gifts from our podcast hosts? Head on over to highvibepodcastnetwork.com. Grab your gifts from each of the hosts and join our movement. Until next time, stay stay visible, stay soul aligned, and keep raising the vibe.